Man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
That I know that justice is indivisible.
Don't bow down anymore. Over your head, sir. We want our freedom now.
The dark shades of Marine War masked the sun from his eyes. Despite being unable to see any discernible facial expressions that would betray what mood he may be in, his resolute stature and the irritable tone in his voice said it plainly. The soldiers he had been sent to train were not getting it, and he was losing his cool. The Marine raised his arm and thrust forward his index finger, piercing through the air to rebuff the soldier like a schoolteacher does a disobedient child. "How is he ready?" he demanded. The translator quickly interpreted for him. "Ready would be on the road, stage, ready to move at 8:30, the Marine declared. Then, as if becoming frustrated with the translator, he barks out his final command before the translator could finish interpreting. "Come on, let's go." The Marine is one of the several embedded tactical trainers sent to train the Afghan National Army. The number of trainers in Afghanistan has increased by 4,000, bringing the total troop level to 68,000. Building a seasoned corps of experts and sending them to Afghanistan is considered a high priority. Admiral Mike Mullen, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has raised awareness to the issue, and senior officers familiar with the matter have cited too few volunteers as part of the trouble. With too few experts and the lack of adequate preparation time before being deployed in Afghanistan, coupled with the absence of cultural awareness and understanding of the Pacific tribal and governance situation, Afghanistan is seeing the return of old Cold War fighters. To the dismay of many of those familiar with the United States' tumultuous history in Afghanistan, which involved the United States being on intimate terms with extremists, including sending weapons to the Taliban to fight the Soviet Union, this strategy should feel like a case of deja vu. When the security in Kunduz province declined, the governor and the intelligence community moved quickly to correct the problem. They needed a group with experience the U.S. grappled to obtain, so they called on the Mujahedeen. Robert Dreyfuss, in his book Devil's Game, How the United States Unleashed Fundamentalist Islam, wrote that the Mujahedeen were trained by the Green Beret and the U.S. Navy SEALs in United States facilities on the East Coast under the oversight of Zbigniew Brzezinski, who is currently President Barack Obama's foreign policy advisor. Their training consisted of automatic weapons, timers and explosive, and remote control devices for triggering mines and bombs. Some of the volunteers later became foot soldiers for Al-Qaeda. One of the volunteers included Osama bin Laden. When the Soviets pulled out of Afghanistan, all that was left was the Mujahedeen, who had a gruesome way of dealing with its opposition. They would torture their victims by first cutting off their noses, ears, and genitals, then removing one slice of skin after another. The Taliban was able to repel the warlords with the leadership of Mullah Omar in September 1996. The Taliban, however, did leave one social ill in particular to bear its mark of irrevocable despair from Afghanistan to the cities of the United States, facilitated in part by the CIA, and its residual effects can still be seen to this day. It is the opium trade. It was and still is a booming market. The Taliban did not move immediately to ban poppy cultivation. They even collected a 20% zakat tax. Finally, after the Taliban did take action, American narcotic agents were stunned. The crop had been completely wiped out in less than a year. It was an amazing feat seeing how in 2006, Afghanistan accounted for 90% of the world's supply of opium. The complete eradication of opium came at a cost to the farmers, who had to grow crops such as wheat instead. In the lucrative business of opium, farmers got their cash up front. With crops like wheat, farmers don't get paid until their crops are sold. With the Taliban removed from power, however, the opium trade is back in full swing. U.S. policy originally considered it imperative that the crop be purged. Now the view has switched gears, and an alternative solution has been decided. Richard Holbrooke, U.S. representative for Afghanistan and Pakistan, said the new policy is to downgrade crop eradication. "We're going to upgrade our efforts," Holbrooke said, "to go after the main drug traffickers." It may prove to be a daunting task in light of the new revelation, fraught with ever-increasing corruption. If Holbrooke wants the U.S. policy to reflect the actions it plans to take, then U.S. forces may be obligated, at the very least, to conduct an investigation into allegedly the most connected drug offender in all the country, the president's brother, Ahmed Wali Karzai. Ambitious investigative news reporters have set out themselves to unravel the mystery of the possible CIA connection with Wally Karzai. If what happened to Tom Lasseter, a reporter for McClatchy News, serves as an example, it might be an ill-advised decision to press the issue. Lasseter wrote in his report that he was threatened with physical violence after questioning Karzai, and he immediately left the country. Another American connection to heroin has come full circle in Afghanistan. The story began back in 1998 when a man named Ahmed Papal, former Mujahedeen member, was charged with conspiring to ship over a kilo of heroin to the United States. After being released from prison in 1998, Papal teamed up with his brother Rashid Papal, also convicted of heroin smuggling, and they returned to Afghanistan. The circumstance in Afghanistan could prove to be advantageous for the two brothers, because now the country is ruled by President Hamid Karzai, the Papal's cousin. The Papal brothers have recently parlayed their entrepreneurial knowledge they learned from the underground economics of the heroin business to their new venture, security. The name of the security company is Wanton Risk Management. It is a private military arm of Wanton Group, a conglomerate involved in telecommunications and logistics. The company's senior personnel have all the skills necessary for the undertaking they are engaged in. Its staff consists of ex-British military from special service. In a strange twist of irony, one of the Wanton's clients is the U.S. Department of Defense. Wanton protects Afghan trucks carrying American supplies from Kabul to Kandahar. It is a warlords association with the Taliban that keeps the people and the supplies being transported safe. The U.S. is essentially forced to pay a protection racket to the group it is supposed to be fighting against. The army is basically paying the Taliban not to shoot them, one American executive told The Guardian. You are paying the people in local areas, some are warlords, some are politicians in the police force, to move your trucks. The prices charged produce a lucrative return. NCL Holding has a $360 million contract for 2 years from the U.S. military. Millions of dollars paid to the company snakes its way back to President Karzai's cousins, the Papal brothers. Hamid Wardak is the chief principal for the company. He is also the son of Afghan Defense Minister General Rahim Wardak, who himself is a former Mujahedeen leader. Shipping U.S. supplies across the country is risky business, especially when companies are banned from arming themselves with anything more than a rifle. The stipulation guarantees the attackers have the upper hand. If it comes down to a confrontation, it will be transporters armed with AK-47s against the Taliban, armed with rocket-propelled grenades shooting from 3,000 feet away. The decision not to pay is met with immediate reprisal. A U.S.-owned firm called the Four Horsemen International opted not to pay. Because of their insolence they showed toward the warlords and the insurgents, they are attacked on every mission. In Baghlan Province and Helmand Province, 8 police officers were killed. Unfortunately for the police, they are targeted more than foreign troops. It is the job of the embedded tactical trainers to prepare the Afghan National Army to defend the innocent against these attacks. But no such urgency is present among the recruits. Some are dangerously unprepared. Some have no gear. Some have no weapons. As one Marine noted, even if they were told in advance that an attack was coming at 8:30 in the morning the next day, they would still be drinking tea by 8:29. He watches his recruits walk down a long, desolate dirt road. He glanced down at the ground in front of him and followed after them.